All right. We are live and we are uh, live on Leadership That Transforms. So we're excited to see you tonight. And we are here sharing some insights into the Torah portion this week, Toledot. Uh, in fact, it's the we actually just finished this Torah portion here in Israel, but we are going to be talking about it. And so we want to welcome you here on Leadership That Transforms. And this is where we are discussing the Torah portion and everything that is connected to leadership, ideas that connect us to leadership. And so let's just make sure that we're here. Yeah, we are here. Oh, we have a member request. So let me see if I can get that. Barbara, yes, let's approve that. Okay. All right. Barbara is on. Okay, so we invite you to be a part of our chat. If you have any questions, we're going to invite you to ask them. We'll get to them towards the end. Any comments, and we're going to get started tonight. So this, as I said, this is the Torah portion called Toledot. Toledot means these are the generations. And in particular, we are starting with the story of Isaac and Rebekah. And they have now married. She is pregnant when we start this story. And there is a war going on inside of her womb. And she understands that this is not normal. Okay? So she goes to seek a prophet to understand what is going on in her womb. And the rabbis say, a lot of commentary says, she actually goes to the school of Shem and she seeks a prophet, or she seeks the advice of Shem, what's going on. And that's kind of where we pick up, because the Lord speaks very, very specific to her what is happening inside of her womb. And by doing that, he then gives instructions on what is coming. So, so here we go. So we're looking at Isaac and Rebekah. And let me see if I can move my little picture. So let's see how this is going to work. I'll just move me around here. But we're looking at Isaac and Rebekah. And and let me make, I don't know if I have it right in front of me, but I do want to note that this study, and the study every week, is in honor of Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And the core of the content is taken from his book, Lessons in Leadership. So we want to give honor to him tonight. He recently passed 2 or 3 weeks ago. So even the more, we want to do this in memory of his name. So that means, if you would, I apologize. I thought I had it right here. Hold on, folks, hold on. I'm going to say that's strange. I do have it. It's right here. Okay, here we go. All right. So I'm going to read to you from the very beginning of what Rabbi Sacks writes. He says the Netziv, And the Netziv is actually Naphtali Tzvi Yehuda. He was in Berlin, Yehuda Berlin, 1816, 1893. He was the dean of the yeshiva in Volozhin. And he made a sharp observation that Isaac and Rebekah seem not to have communicated closely. Rebekah's relationship with Isaac was not the same as that between Sarah and Abraham or Rachel and Jacob. When they had a problem, they were not afraid to speak about it, but not so with Rebekah. And so this is a Devar Torah on Genesis 24:65. And he goes on to say, and I'll continue reading here, the Netziv, senses the distance from the very first moment when Rebekah sees Isaac meditating in the field, at which point she covered herself with a veil. He comments, she covered herself out of awe and sense of inadequacy, and as if she felt she was unworthy to be his wife. And from then on, this trepidation was fixed in her mind. Now I want to stay here for just a minute, and I want to talk about this, because this is as important of a subject today as it was back in the days of Isaac and Rebekah. Now, let's just consider the thought of why, first and foremost, she might even feel inadequate or unworthy. Now, we understand that when Abraham sends Eliezer out to look for a wife for Yitzchak, he specifically tells him to go back to the home country, to Haran, and to get a wife from the family, all right, his family, Sarah's family, but to get a wife from that group. I have to go back and check exactly. So I wasn't even thinking about it. But the point being that everything that the perfect wife could be, I mean, Abraham says exactly what he's looking for Yitzchak, right? Eliezer lights upon Rebekah. He prays before he sees her, and she does everything perfectly. First of all, she serves him water. She takes care of his camels. She is absolutely stunning. She's beautiful to look upon. She's gracious. She's kind. She's full of hospitality. She takes him back to the house. They make sure he's fed. In every sense of the word, everything that Abraham requested is in Rebekah. So why in the world, with all of these amazing traits that she has, would she even potentially be inadequate or feel that she's unworthy to be his wife? Well, I don't know, but I can surmise one thing, and that is she probably comes from a family of means. They were not poor by any stretch of the imagination, but they were probably not exceedingly wealthy either. But they were a family of means. Eliezer, of course, brings a lot of gifts that's bestowed upon her and the family. All right, she's sent off with her maid. So obviously she has a woman that takes care of a servant that serves her. It says her nurse, or a couple of them. So she's well taken care of. However, Isaac, on the other hand, has inherited everything. And Abraham was the wealthiest man in Canaan. He was probably one of the wealthiest men on the face of the earth. Abraham was exceedingly wealthy. And Isaac has inherited everything. With that said, even though Abraham is still alive, so, Isaac is not yet taken over everything, but this is an beyond extremely wealthy family. And she probably would not have known that until she lighted upon where he was out meditating in the field. And all of a sudden it became very, very clear to her that she was out of her league, way out of her league. And so with that, this is just one possible insight that could have led her to being inadequate. We also don't know much about her home life. There could have been a dynamic even within her own family where she was made to feel inadequate or made to feel unworthy. And she carried that with her. And that's a possibility as well. There's been a few times, and I've experienced extreme wealth to this level. I have experienced that in my life. And yet, I didn't grow up like this. My father did very well for himself, very well. And so we knew and tasted of a life that would be upper middle class, and middle class to upper middle class, but upper middle class. So we tasted of that. We enjoyed this lifestyle. I remember when we moved from a very tiny home when I was a very little girl to a bigger home. But when we moved into our home in the upper middle class part of Lombard, Illinois, I remember it was like a mansion. In fact, it was on the grounds in the backyard. When you went to the back of the backyard, in the middle of all of these houses was a mansion. I mean, literally, it had a ball. I remember we had the opportunity to go in it once. I mean, it was just, I don't know, maybe 30, 40,000 square feet. I mean, it was huge. And so I remember it just was amazing that we were living in such a beautiful, big home, and how life had blessed my father and my mother. And all of that was a life that I desired. I pursued, especially when I got out of high school and dropped out of college because I was making money and I wanted to pursue a life and become a major businesswoman, etc., etc. But as I took and chose a different path, the path of the Lord, the path of Torah, the path of studying scripture and prayer, and I realized that when I found myself in these settings of extreme wealth, and I did on numerous occasions, I always had this feeling that I'm just so far out of my league. I really don't belong here. I'm not worthy to be here. I'm not adequate to be here. And I have just this sense of what Rebecca felt. But what's setting this situation apart here is that she never, ever got over it. In other words, she never said, okay, I may feel inadequate, I may feel unworthy, but I need to figure out how to navigate this, how to overcome this, because I'm here. This has nothing to do with me being unworthy. It has nothing to do with me being inadequate. It has everything to do with how I can serve my community here. And this is interesting because Abraham and Sarah, this was who they were. That's why they became so great in the land of Canaan. They learned to serve their community. They served whatever people group they encountered and became an influence in every part of the land of Canaan. And so Sarah was always ready and prepared to host her community. So she stepped up to the plate to become and fit and learn and do what was needed to be the kind of woman for her husband in the role that she was handed. You find this also to be true with Jacob's wives. But with Rebecca, it never appears she does this. It appears that she never gets over herself. Very important. And this happens to a lot of women. And I know I'm probably talking, the majority of my audience is going to be women tonight. And this is a part of, it's a potentially, I don't want to say it is a part, it's potentially a problem. Because these two things, if indeed they remain as part of your character, okay, then you will have a very difficult time truly entering into your destiny. Because we think so much is based on worthy or not worthy, adequate or not adequate. But the truth is, everything it's not based on that at all. Whether you're adequate or you're unworthy, or it's irrelevant. What is relevant is that you find within yourself the courage, the strength, and you learn the skills that you need to become what you have been destined to become. And if you have been you're married and your husband has a job that demands hospitality, okay, you need to learn how to be hospitable. I have seen this once, I've seen it hundreds of times, where there is a tremendous incongruence between the wife and the husband. Now, I personally, and my family will attest to this, my mother, she was a Sarah, and she died during Chayei Sarah. My father, whatever his need was in relation to his career, his future, my mother always stepped up to the plate. So if my father called at 5 o'clock and said, "I'm bringing over 10 guys from the office, and can you have dinner ready?" I'll tell you what, into full gear we went, and my mother would put out a spread. She was a gourmet chef, and it was absolutely incredible. My mother stepped up to the plate every single time my father called. My father had a need. Hospitality was not just a gift for my mother, but it became a skill for my mother because she was put in positions all the time, and I mean all the time, where she was having to serve. And there were times when she would have to open that refrigerator and she had no idea what she was going to do because there wasn't even really time to go to the store because it would be so short notice. And my mother would transform that evening into something amazing. And I just remember that and let me just even say this, and my mother was not a healthy woman. She had an eye problem that was glaucoma. It was a casebook glaucoma, a serious, serious glaucoma in one eye, iritis in another eye. My mother lived in continual pain, but she never, in all of my life, did I ever hear my mother make an excuse. Never. She just did what needed to be done. And my mother's hospitality and the fact that she was a true partner with my father is what made my father so great and so well loved. I mean, he cared so deeply about the men that worked for him and with him. And she complimented him so much. Now, I'm not here to go on about my mother, but I am here to draw this contrast between a woman that will step up to the plate and do what needs to be done, because it has nothing to do with her feeling of unworthy or inadequate. It has to do with her ability and his ability. It's not just her, but we're talking about Rebecca right now, so I'm focusing on that. It has to do with her understanding her role, understanding her destiny with her husband, and stepping up to the plate and making that happen. We never see this with Rebecca. And so we're going to go on. So Rabbi Sachs calls this the price of silence. In fact, he notes, and so does the, as I said, the Netziv, which was Naphtali, Tzvi, Yehuda, Berlin. Okay, he notes that their relationship never appears to be casual, candid, or communicative. Now, I'm not altogether sure about that, and I'll tell you why. Because during the time of famine, it is noted in the scripture that Abimelech, when he thought that Rebekah was Isaac's sister, he caught them. It's misachek. He caught them playing. He caught them out. It says they were sporting together. All right. Well, obviously, they were doing something pretty casual and very intimate for him to say, she's not your sister, she's your wife. Okay? So there obviously was a relationship there that at moments had this intimacy because Abimelech caught them. So, so to what degree we see this casual candidness or communicative, we know there is a little bit of a problem here. Why? Because there are really critical tests, critical moments in this relationship and in the future of the promise of Abraham. And these moments, as we're about to learn, are replete with catastrophe because of the failure to communicate. So let's take a look at that. So let's take a look at Rebecca. She is the focus here. And for several reasons, she's the focus. And I'm not, saying that there shouldn't be, some equal time for Isaac, but we're going to be focusing on Rebecca. Now here, as I mentioned in the beginning, Rebecca she's pregnant. She's carrying obviously more than one child, and she understands this. She feels this war inside of her. And so she goes to inquire of the Lord, and it is noted that she goes to the house of Shem. So that's a very big possibility. That's where she went. And she's told that this is what the Lord says: 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So That's exactly what happens. And Isaac, or not Isaac, but Jacob and Esau are born. Esau is the firstborn, Jacob is the secondborn, and we find that ultimately uh, Esau is going to serve Jacob. However, it appears that Rebekah never tells Isaac about this prophecy concerning Esau and Jacob. So she knows what's going to happen, but she never shares it with Isaac. So one of the ways that we see her manifest this knowledge is the fact that the scripture teaches us or shares with us that Rebekah loves Jacob. And it's very likely that one of the reasons she loved Jacob is because she is, hold on a second, folks. Hello, everybody. Okay. I don't know why. All right, here we are. Just want to make sure that people can. Okay. All right. Hi, Janie. So I don't see that we can here. If you'll bear with me, everybody, just one quick second. I'm going to go over to Facebook. Okay. What I am going to do is I'm going to come in to just sit with me for 1 minute. And goodness gracious me. Oh, I apologize. You know, I should never have moved my computer. I have so many things here open, and I need it to shut up. Just shut up. And I need to get to my groups. It's just a big job here. Let's see. Yeah, it's not going to let me do anything. All right. I'll just come right back to my... Oh, all right. It's trying to let you guys have comments, but then maybe we could do it that way. Okay. I think it just added the comments. Okay. So you can come on and have comments. All right. So anyways, with that said, coming back to Rebekah, what we see here is that she understood that Jacob was actually chosen by God. So she loved Jacob. And what's also interesting that is, even though it's not spoken, we find ourselves asking the question, why did she love Jacob and why did Isaac love Esau? And so in an earlier class I did today, we discussed that. And one possibility is because Rebekah loved Jacob. She knew he was chosen, and he was going to be inheriting the promise. He was going to be inheriting everything. And so she rejected Esau. And when Isaac saw her rejecting Esau, Isaac, he himself was very compassionate about that. Now, Isaac has had this experience before because he saw what happened with Sarah rejecting Ishmael. So Isaac understands the pain of all of this kind of rejection. So, plus the scripture does tell us that Esau was a hunter. and Isaac liked Esau because he was a hunter. So we do see that there were characteristics about Esau that Isaac also liked. But I think there was something really this dynamic with Rebekah and the way that she doted over Jacob versus Esau that truly played into the hands of Isaac loving Esau even more. Now, let's talk about the deception, because what happens now, oh, Rebecca, if indeed she never tells Isaac about this vision and the word of the Lord that has been given to her regarding these two boys, and it's time for the blessing. It's time for the blessing of the firstborn. Right, Rebecca overhears Isaac, and he hears him tell Esau that he needs to go into the field. He needs to get some game, prepare his favorite meal, come back because he's ready to give him the blessing. He doesn't know how much longer he'll be alive, etc. And as soon as she hears that, she goes into deception mode. Now, this is the second time we're seeing this. This is not the first time. The first time we see deception start to play out is when, even though it really wasn't deception, I mean, Jacob was very clear to Esau that if he wanted to eat of his lentil stew that he prepared, that it was going to cost him his birthright. So why do I want to tie this in before I even talk about the story of deception? Well, this is because if indeed everything had been on the table in the beginning, and these sons understood what was going to be developing here, and nothing had been hidden, then Jacob never would have felt like he needed to be in a place to actually take that birthright from his brother. And so here he is, and he is literally selling stew to his brother for his birthright. Now, that's very shrewd. And, in negotiations and things like this, I mean, it's really quite brilliant what he does. However, in the fact that Esau, you can call it even a big test. I mean, the fact that Esau would even hand over his birthright just for food tells you a lot about Esau. But you still see there's this underhanded way to go about obtaining what was really by God already rightfully his. God was going to give it to Jacob. So there are some different ways you can even look at this. Jacob understood. His mother probably already told him, you're going to inherit this. You need to get that birthright from your brother. All right. Otherwise, how would he even know? So there's this real kind of close thing going on with Rebecca and Jacob. Well, now Rebecca says to Jacob, I want you to deceive your father, because you have got to have that firstborn blessing, because this is what the Lord said to me. You're going to be the one that gets it. And so she puts in motion this whole ordeal about the blessing, getting this firstborn blessing. And she puts skins on him, and he feels like Esau around the neck and around the hands, even though the voice was Jacob's. The father was deceived by the smell, by the venison, and by the other senses because he couldn't see. And he hands over the blessing. And when Esau shows up, which is not too long after, with his venison, he is absolutely beside himself. And now let's take a look at these unintended intentions. And that is the consequence of this deception. So the first thing we see is that Isaac trembles violently. Then we hear a whole narrative from Esau. And the first thing Esau really mentions is that Jacob took his birthright the first time, and now he's taken his blessing. And inside of Esau's heart, besides the unbelievable, I can't even imagine the scream, the cry that went out of Esau when this happened. Now, you can maybe say, but doesn't it say that Esau is like Edom and God hates Esau? Well, there's reasons for this. But if we're looking at this story just from a story of compassion, a story of family, all right? At this point, okay, we've had insights that the fact, as I just said, Esau's willing to sell his birthright. That means things that were very important to him and very important to God were not important, or very important to Jacob and very important to God were obviously not important to Esau. But from just a family situation, we find now Esau it's beyond bitterness. He has murder in his heart. He is going to kill his brother. So the result of that is that Rebekah has to send Jacob into exile, where of course he's going to get his wives, Leah and Rachel, or Rachel. And then the penalty for Rebekah, she's not going to be able to see her loving son for decades. Like 2 decades, right? And then for Jacob, first of all, when he gets to Laban's house, he starts to work for Laban. Laban deceives him once, right in the beginning, by giving him Leah to marry instead of Rebekah, who he just worked for 7 years. Then he actually ends up saying to Laban, "You have changed my wages 10 times." So Laban deceived him 10 different times until finally he comes into this place where he deceives Laban. But this deception was on the up and up. I mean, he just said, this is what, if you want me to stay here, I have to earn my own living, and this is how I'm going to do it. And Laban agrees to that, and God blesses it, and he, of course, just obtains massive amounts of sheep and agriculture and commerce in the sheep world. All right. But that's just there. Then they return to the land, and then he has all these sons, and then he's got the whole story with Joseph, where the sons deceive the father, and it's so painful. Thinking Joseph is dead, he doesn't get over it, and then of course the whole story. But this is now Jacob is living a lifetime of deceit and strife. This is the consequence of this betrayal. This is the consequence of the deception. And what's amazing about that, and right here what we want to say is that this is the human price that we pay for a failure to communicate. Now let me see if I have, there, this is where I wanted to go first. 4 lives are scarred by one act that was never necessary. Why? If Rebekah would have just been open and communicated what she knew with her husband, he would have probably said, I know, and so I am going to have a blessing for both of them. Jacob is going to get the blessing of the firstborn, but I am going to have a blessing for Esau. And it will be a good blessing. And if they would have known that the providence of God and how God works. Not that they didn't know. Let me tell you, these people were schooled in the house of Shem. They understood sacrifice. They understood, even Jacob talks about tithes. There are there's so much going on here that has been passed down from generation to generation, and plus, Abraham is still alive, and so there's a lot of a lot that is knowledge. There's a lot of knowledge here. There's a lot that's being imparted into this house. So this could have been a family discussion on how they're going to handle this. This is why they're going to handle it this way. If indeed she would not have concealed such important information from her husband. So communication could have kept this whole situation from happening. But now you've got all these lives that are scarred forever and so much pain, so much suffering because they didn't communicate. I understand this. I've seen it. I've seen it in other relationships. I've seen it in my own relationships. I've seen it in family. And many of us have. So I'm sure this is talking to many of us, not just me on a personal level or to our audience on a collective level. So such is the human price we pay for the failure to communicate. In other words, the failure to communicate leads to hardship. It leads to heartache, things that are not necessary. So communication matters, and this is such a key, it's a key dynamic law, precept, and statute in the Torah. In fact, God creates the heavens and the earth through communication. When we first are introduced to Adam, what does it say? We know that God is daily walking with Adam in the garden, daily communicating with him. And he communicates one thing. Listen, this is what I don't want you to do. This is what I do want you to do. But God is explicit to Adam about not eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God tells him what he likes. He has some hard communication with him. But he's walking with Adam. And what's the first thing when communication breaks? When they don't want to tell God what they did, right? So they hide. And God has to go looking for them. They don't want to even tell God what. They're like, oh, well, maybe. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. Communication from the very first words of the Torah is one of the most important concepts God wants us to understand. And now, bringing it into our topic, leadership that transforms. How does this work as a leader? And leaders, again, I always say, even if you just have a dog in your house, like Janie, Janie has a cute dog. You have to lead your dog. You have to lead him outside, lead him inside, all right? But when you're a parent, you're a leader. You're in the role of a leader. You're a leader in your community, your neighborhood. Trust me. You can sit in your house all you want, even under COVID. But you are a leader in so many ways in life. And a lot of times we don't see ourselves as leaders. And here, this brings us back to our discussion about Rebecca. When Rebecca became the wife of Isaac, she became a leader. And she needed to step into that role. And we never see that with her. And so we never want to find ourselves wanting or falling short of the role and the responsibility that God has ordained for us in whatever circumstance we are in at the moment. So we take a look at the types of communication that the Torah teaches us is very, very important. And one, good communication, strong communication. In other words, when we talk about strong, we're talking about the fact that we're not afraid to communicate when it is needed. All right? Honest communication. And that is where we address the good and the bad. All right? That we don't hide from the things that we don't like because of confrontation. We don't hide from them. We are honest about that. And open communication, that we get to the point, and that is the best place to be in any friendship, relationship, any relationship, where you can have such open communication with another person that even if you say something or do something, they are not going to huff and puff and storm out of your house or get offended over the littlest thing you say. That you have the liberty to be yourself regardless, and to be open in your communication. And that's really what you want with, and it's not that you'll never be, and this is something, you'll notice judgmental is not there. You'll notice critical is not there. Criticism is a part of communication. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I have to tell you, everybody is judgmental. Everybody has bias. Every single person does. Now, there are those that learn how to master their opinions. They learn how to master their tongue. Doesn't mean they don't have bias or judgment. They just have mastered what they say. But not everybody does. And so for those that haven't, people have to learn to let there be open communication, and then to negotiate that open communication into an honest and good conversation. Not easy. Not easy at all. In fact, it's a skill. It's an art. It takes time. But communication is what it really is the glue of that relationship. I get people that say crazy stuff when they, as far as I'm concerned, it's crazy. I mean, they go off on things and they don't know, let's see how I want to say it right now. I'll just use this example, okay? So there are a lot of people that are in the Christian community that are not familiar with the Jewish community, so they'll make statements that are really irrelevant or incongruent with someone who has knowledge from the Jewish side. And they're very strong about it, And I always find that I can come back and make, say to them, you're crazy, this is a stupid statement, blah, blah, blah. But I never do. I've learned over the years that's not at all. First of all, I appreciate their comment. I want to thank them for it because I do appreciate the fact that they said something. And then I want to make my statement regarding that in a positive way. I want to address the issue, not the person. I want to address the issue, not the person. And so I address the issue. I don't want to reflect on the person. And I would say almost 100% of the time, that person's attitude, their the way that they come back and communicate is completely different. Completely. They start thanking and they start asking questions and they start respecting and and they feel like now we can have an open conversation and without attitude. It's pretty cool to watch. And it happens to me quite frequently. So, and it's taken a lot of years for me to understand that the more I appreciate their sentiment and I work with their sentiment, and I don't connect what they're saying as a reflection of who they are as a person. All right, I keep these two things separate and I just address issues. I find more and more that all of these walls come tumbling down and we can start to have good, strong, honest, and open communication. Um, let's talk about criticism for a minute. Oh, and you know what? This actually just falls right into what I was just talking about. Um, One of the most important aspects in Jewish psychology and in the Torah makes a very, very strong distinction between an act and a person. Now we necessarily don't always necessarily see this, but I think the more you follow me through this year of going through these Torah portions, you're going to see this. So criticism, it must be of the act, not of the person. The person must feel respected, whatever his or her failures are. And you know, it's interesting that if we take a look at the story we are looking at right now, Jacob and Rebekah, when Jacob is sent into exile, I cannot even imagine what he was thinking. He's thinking, I cannot believe what my mother just had me do. I can't believe I just did what my mother asked. And this is the consequence. This is what I have to do because I obeyed my mother. I mean, this stuff is going crazy through it, you know. And here he gets as far as Mount Moriah, which is the Temple Mount here in Jerusalem. And it's night. Night has come. And he's going to lay his head down. He lays his head down, and this is where God meets him. He sees angels ascending and descending. And the Lord stands beside him and says to him, I'm going to be with you, Jacob. This, as long as it takes to fulfill my will, I'm going with you. You're going, every need's going to be met. I'm going to make sure you're protected. You're going to see the covenant fulfilled through you. Everything I promised your father Abraham, everything Isaac, and everything your grandfather Abraham, I am going to give it to you. The land, the children. I'm going to be with you, Jacob, and I'm never going to forsake you. I'm never even going to leave you until everything's fulfilled. I mean, and which meant that I'm not even going to take you from this earth, Jacob, until we see this promise in motion and being fulfilled. So this was how God dealt with Jacob after this horrific event. God knew that to endure what he was about to endure, he needed to meet God and have the confidence that God was going to impart into him. But the other thing he needed to know that he was respected, that there was going to be a lot of suffering because of the act, but that as for Jacob, he was still in relationship with God. Very important. You see how God deals with this issue. He deals with Jacob as a covenant child that never, ever changes. In fact, there is no variance there. Not one time does God leave Jacob off or doesn't ensure that he's being respected. So you really see how God handles that in this situation. So much so that when he has to meet Esau again, remember what God does. Not only in the wrestling of the angel, but God goes before Jacob, and Esau bows to Jacob. So Jacob, as much as he's bowing to Esau, Esau comes back and he lets him know that he respects him, that there is all this honor. You see this even with like Abimelech and Abraham, Abimelech and Isaac. You see this respect, but very strong criticism about the act, the fact that they didn't tell the truth about their wives, right? So this is a very strong Torah concept. Now, in Judaism, in Jewish culture, there's what we call guilt morality. And in Greek culture, there's what's called, or even Western culture, it's called shame morality. And so the fundamental difference between guilt morality and shame morality is that guilt makes a clear distinction between the act and the person. Shame does not. Shame never makes a distinction. So the person never, it goes right back to what we said about Rebecca in the beginning. The person deals with so much shame that they made or did something wrong that they have such a hard time ever thinking either they're worthy or that they can ever be adequate or that they can ever amount or reach the destiny they're called to reach. And that is a real shame thing. And there is so much of it in the Western culture. But guilt, again, separates the act from the person. So let's talk about some high stakes, kind of bringing what we're learning even into politics. I don't think there is any area of communal area that requires greater communication than the political world, especially in international affairs. Now we can go through the Bible and look at these examples, and we can also look at them in history. And for those of you that were alive, 1962, I was just a witty bitty baby, but we had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And we were on the brink of a nuclear war with the Soviet Union. And so when this decision was being made, there was President John F. Kennedy. He actually received 2 messages from the Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. And the first message he received was very conciliatory, that he wanted to work it out. He did not want to have a nuclear war with the United States. And the second was kind of hawkish, like, they were going to play America, all right? And by playing America, that means that America would have to act in a way that she would have to be the, kind of the strong, lay down the law, this is the way it's going to be, and push the button kind of situation. Threatening. And so when President Kennedy was speaking to his advisors, he was sharing the fact that he believed, or they were sharing the fact that they believed that the hawkish Khrushchev was the real view, and that's what should be taken seriously. There was a man named Llewellyn Thompson Jr., and he had been an American ambassador to the Soviet Union from 1957 to 1962. And he knew the Russian president very well. He stayed in his home. He was very close to the president. And he said to President Kennedy, he said, I'm telling you, the hawkish view is not his view. His view is the conciliatory view. And so John F. Kennedy listened to Thompson. And so what they did is they gave the presidents of Russia, they gave him a very a way of backing out of the whole threat without him losing face, and the nuclear crisis was averted. So two choices were posed there in communication. One was conciliatory, which was the real choice. The other one, the hawkish one, they note was apparently written to appease the Russian generals and the Russian political party. All right, so they were doing that to make them feel good, like we've got the upper hand of the United States, right? But the president really didn't want to go to war with the US. So the thing was here, let's see what I have here. Now, come back to that. How important communication is in averting something. This could have been catastrophic, all over communication. We could have been in an all-out nuclear war because if we would have taken or chosen the wrong path. So it's so important. You can see how important communication is, and how important it is that it's open and honest. We have seen politically, now with President Trump, you know exactly where he stands all the time. All right, it's open, it's bluntly honest in every way. But we have had leaders that did exactly like Rebecca. In fact, Nancy Pelosi is, and I'll call her out because it was just revealed, she sticks more stuff into her, what was it, for some museum, I think it was, $330 million for a museum. Stuck it right into the aid package for the American people. Oh, she does stuff like this. So they do stuff like this all the time. That, folks, is not communicating. That is, once again, it's deceitful. And this is the exact opposite of what should be going on. And so that leads you back to the fact that whether you're a parent, whether it's on your job, whether it's in your school, whether it's in your community, no matter where you are leading, where you are living a life of example, when you live in a life of example, you are leading. You are in a leadership role. And your role is to develop a Torah culture. Develop a culture that is replete with open, truthful, honest communication. And so you have to consider this, that everywhere you go, you are the one who is shaping the culture. And so if we're going to shape it, let's learn from these lessons and let's do our very best to shape it correctly. All right, so I think we're at the end of our presentation. Okay, and all right, let's see what I can do here. Let's see if I can come up a little bit more. All right. Does anybody have any questions? We don't really have I don't think we have too many people on right now, but this goes and gets replayed. So a lot of people watch it there. So, so if you have a question, let me know. Janie, if you have any questions, let me know. And apart from that, I am going to go because tomorrow is also a very big Hebrew day. So I'm going to let you guys go. It's after midnight here. So, and I have a early class, 7 o'clock in the morning. So thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this insightful. And I will see you tomorrow or next week. All right. God bless. And let me know if you enjoyed it below and share it with others. Okay. Bye bye. Thank you.